Imagine a conscious contact with God so strong that no matter what you are doing or not doing, that no matter what your kids are up to or not up to, and that whether you've got the person of your dreams or they're just not cooperating, that you are happy, content, and at peace. A space where everyone else's thoughts, attitudes, and actions are beautiful and exactly as they are supposed to be. Well, this is the space where I like to play. My name is Mischa Z, and this is today's Bitch Slap. Join me as I shed light on the thoughts, actions, and attitudes that are causing you pain, and we train our minds to go to the capital S inner self, the joy that is waiting for us, the God within.
Like the world to see.
Yes.
But really, this is not people won't see it as of now. It's more of a visual, anyway.
Correct. It's more of a visual, it's a audio.
Yeah.
Audio.
Got it.
Audible.
I'm still
Audio.
going to put the mask on, so we're good.
Oh, no, absolutely. Me too. I wish my hair was better. It feels a little puffy today, but that's all right. I'm going to find a person at some point who I'm going to get to repurpose the content and put little blips out there. I'm not there yet, but that is a goal. So it's good that we have the illusions are pure.
Exactly.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Courtney Leonard, welcome to the Bitch Slap podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. I love the podcast, and I'm happy to be a part of it.
Fantastic. Thank you. I love how you love it. That sounds funny and silly, but as a fledgling content creator, to have somebody who likes what you do is awesome.
No, it's been, I listen to it when I'm getting ready in the morning, and I think you always have great little tidbits of just goodness.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. That right there will help pull me forward. Pull me forward.
Yes. Keep going. Keep at it.
Yes. So I have a few things that I want to discuss, but I'm going to start here. This is going to be the topic of our podcast. Successful. This is what you typed to me. Yes. Successful salespeople who are retired. And then after all, I've been working since I was 12. That's how I justify my new schedule, your new schedule, being Courtney's new schedule.
Yes.
Being an A-type producer in sales, right? That's
right. For 20 something years.
Yeah. And relatively successful.
Yes. I've been lucky enough, fortunate enough to be consistently successful. I think kicking off a sales career before the year 2000, I started selling software upgrades so that people's, computers we didn't know what was going to happen back in 99 when it was, year 2000's coming. So yes. That was the start of my sales career. And that was, when I was 12 years old. No, I'm kidding. No.
Yeah, right. So let me ask you, successful right out of the gate? And the 2000s coming your way, you get a job as a salesperson, successful right out of the gate, or?
Successful right out of the gate. I was lucky enough. My husband always says, and my parents have always said, it's really, a lot of it is who you know. And so I was lucky enough. My husband at the time was working for Giro, Giro Bell, the helmet company.
Bike. Yeah. Okay.
Yep, bike helmet. And he happened to know someone who knew somebody at the software company where I started. And so I didn't have any experience, and they ended up taking a chance on me. They wanted, young people without experience so that they could probably pay us a little bit less than they would a typical really experienced person. Yes. And so, I was successful right out of the gate. I just listened to what they told me that I needed to do in order to do it. And I think that, funny enough, a lot of people in my family are in sales and have also been successful. And so I think sometimes I feel like it's one of those things where you're born with that sort of thing. You can also learn things, but you, of course, you have to have a lot of other things that go into it where you can relate to who you're selling to and really care about what you're helping them with.
I love that. Which you just reminded me of a story. When I was in mortgages as a loan officer, I made it look very easy. I mean, by the time I got there, there was a lot of experience and pain and suffering to get to the easy part. But I had people that would join my team that would do all the day-to-day things, make the calls, say the scripts, do the stuff, but they couldn't seem to get over that edge, right?
I've seen that so many times. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, it's interesting. What's the thing that pushes somebody over the edge?
Right. What is that little ingredient? And I've been asked that so many times with director of sales or a VP of sales who will say, if you could bottle up, that secret ingredient, what would it be? And, I've seen time and time again, the company I just worked for, we had a lot of people in, they would kind of prep our meetings for us, and they would say, sales is so easy. I want to come over. I think if you make it look easy, you're doing it the right way. I mean, that's really, you're doing it the right way. But they would come over and they would get the product. They understood the sales cycle. They got all of that, and they just couldn't do it. And they ended up bailing out after a year or something like that. So, which is discouraging for them. But I think I really have thought about this for a while, and I thought, what is that special ingredient that makes a salesperson great? And I really honestly believe that it's empathy. Yeah. So I think you have to have empathy in order to, you have to believe in the product that you're selling, first of all, because lie really good, or fake it, or be delusional. Sorry, I'm kidding. Exactly.
But yes, go.
But I think it's empathy. You want to, I honestly wanted to help the people that I was selling products to. And so, customers are like bees and dogs. They can smell, fear, if you're afraid of kind of delving into figuring out what it is that they really need. And they also smell BS. If bees and dogs smell BS, customers are that way. So they know if you're not being honest with them.
Absolutely. So what were you doing before you got your first sales job then? Like, were you?
Yeah, this will be a surprising answer for you. So I was a court reporter. I worked as a court stenographer. So those people that you see if you see a courtroom in action and you see that person with that tiny little machine in front of the judges. I did that. So I went to school for that. My dad instilled in me that, having a skill is something that you can always fall back on. So I ended up, I went to college for psychology, but I knew that I'd have to go to school for years and years and years before being able to support myself. And so I went to a trade school and did, it was a 2-year course. It was supposed to be a 2-year course. I mean, it depends upon how quickly you pick it up, but I did it in a year and a half, and I started working right away. I worked in
overachiever right out of the gate.
I was like, I am going to be the best at this thing. So I just practiced and practiced and practiced. So I got out in a year and a half, and I worked in South Florida of all places. That's where I went to school, and there's a lot of stuff going on in South Florida to keep you busy as a court reporter.
Absolutely.
I worked in criminal court, and I worked in civil court, and it was an interesting ride.
So there's the technical aspect of the stenographer, and it's so interesting because watching somebody who's doing it, it's like this weird, how do I describe it? But whenever I see somebody do that, or a movie, because I've seen it, my father was a lawyer, so I had the opportunity to see it in real life, right?
Right.
And it's such a weird, like, are you disassociated in the moment, or what's going on? Are you just?
No, so you, and it is a different language. I mean, it really is like learning a language, and it has nothing to do with, people always go, oh, you're typing so fast. Is it the alphabet on the machine? And it's not at all. That's, there are keys that have nothing on them, and you're really learning a different language. I always thought of it almost as playing the piano, which I never played, but wanted to. So I just replaced it with that. But, you're not disassociated. You have to really pay attention to what's going on. You can't zone out. It's a high stress job because you're responsible for the record. And if you mess it up, that's, that's not okay. So you have to, and lawyers, some of them speak slowly, some of them speak really quickly. And so you have to, you're holding on sometimes for dear life.
For dear life. So when you, you're hitting keys, so it's not THE.
You're combining keys to make letters, and you're combining keys to make words. You're combining keys to make phrases. So you have to remember, you have to be able to do the alphabet by combining keys. We have shortcuts in terms of, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. That's like one time you hit it one time because there's I still do
there's
it.
The shortcut.
I still do the actual.
Oh, that's amazing.
And I never will forget it. I haven't done it for 20 something years, and I can still in my mind, do it, do the machine in my head.
So as far as tech is concerned, stenography tech, like, has it been the same since 1910? Or when I
don't know when it actually started. I'm sure they taught us that in our theory class or whatever it was. But The cool thing is that now a lot of it has changed a ton. I mean, before it was just you're reading it on the piece of paper that's in the machine, and if they wanted you to read it back, you're pulling up a piece of paper. The paper is still in there. Kind of looks like a calculator, one of those calculators where it's
the tape is.
But there's a ton of software now where it's real time. An attorney can have a laptop on his or her desk and see exactly what you're typing at that moment.
Oh, cool. So there's still a live body. The stenographer is still doing it. Lawyer can see it real time. And then obviously it's all recorded now, I'm sure, in the cloud, so you can refer back to it.
And even when I was doing it 20 years ago, they were recording some of it. Some of it they weren't, but they still want that person. It seems like technology would easily replace court reporters. And that was what a lot of people that I knew back in the day when I was going to school, they're like, that's going to be obsolete in 5 years. Yeah. And that's just not the case. People are still, going strong. And the other thing too, that's really cool about it is, hearing impaired, you use it for closed captioning. So anytime you see that closed captioning on a television or maybe the president's speech or something like that. That's a court reporter, transcribing or taking down the record of what you're saying. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's super cool. What do you think? So are you doing it year and a half? As you're in the courtroom, and let's say it sounds like you did some heavy stuff, maybe murder or drug.
I had an internship, and one of the cases was a murder.
Okay, so you're taking. What do you call it? The notes or what do you call it?
Yeah, taking
the record. The record.
Yeah,
so
taking down the record.
Cool. So you're taking the record, and you're like, Mr. Smith pulled out the gun and shot Jane in the head, and you're like, in the moment, are you like, or are you disassociated from? No.
You have to completely show. The hard part for me was that you can't show any emotion. So if you're in court for 8 hours, or if you're in a deposition, or I took depositions in jail cells. In South Florida, which just made me realize, I knew I didn't ever want to go to jail, but I knew that I really didn't want to go to jail. But no,
when you say South Florida, like South Florida's, there's shiny parts of California, there's darker parts of California, there's shiny parts of Florida, there's South Florida. That's like where the
anytime you watch Cops or something like that, it's always Broward County. We always my husband and I watching them. It's always Broward County.
Always.
That was my neighboring town. And there are really beautiful areas in South Florida. There are great places. It's a beautiful area, but there's a ton of people, and so there's
shenanigans ensue.
So, but you can't show emotion, and you can't talk to anybody after. I can't go out after work with the lawyers and the people that I work with and talk about the case. You can't say, wow, that was really messed up. Can you believe it? Like you cannot, as lawyers can talk amongst themselves.
Absolutely.
You can't talk about it because it's,
you got to be the disinterested third party.
Exactly.
So that's I guess it's that stoic thing that I've always,
Yeah.
the stenographer is almost just like chewing
Right.
gum. Oh yeah, and Bob was shot, and they're like,
yes.
and
Yes.
so you've got the poker face on, but then you start hearing the gory details. Are you internalizing the gory details, or are you able to be like, or are you just does that question make sense?
It totally makes sense.
Yeah.
I was able to listen to those things and sort of disassociate, like you said, which makes sense for me. I'm really good at doing that anyway. It was, it was like part of my upbringing.
I know.
And the
It's like
snow thing, I'm like, oh, okay, that is me. But what I couldn't do were kids, things about kids being abused, or I did a few things on that, and I could not. That I internalized, and I would turn down work that had to do with that. I just couldn't listen to that. So I actually, when I moved I lived in South Florida, and because there was so much crime and I was kind of really seeing it up close and personal, I wanted to move anyway, but I decided to get out of South Florida, and I ended up moving to Colorado, which everyone goes, wow, what a change. I mean, complete polar opposites. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what I was looking for. So I, took my like $400 in my bank account that I had, or whatever it was, and, packed up my front wheel drive car to go to the snow. And it was the best move I ever made. And I was also able to work as a court reporter there. But the cool thing is that I was able to work in all the snow towns. So I could work in Vail, I could work in Aspen. I worked in the Aspen courthouse where Ted Bundy jumped out of the top. It's a 2-story, really small, kind of old fashioned looking courthouse.
Yes.
And that's where Ted Bundy escaped. He jumped out of that courthouse and took off. That's where John Denver's divorce proceedings went on in the Aspen courthouse. So
such rich history.
Yeah. And so I did that, Breckenridge. I mean, any of the cool ski towns that you can think of in Colorado, I worked in those ski towns doing. Amazing. But most no more criminal, because, there's really not a ton of crime. I did mostly civil there, which I thought was just so boring. I was bored to death. And I, the hard thing about being a court reporter is that you work 8 hours, and then the attorney says, I want that tomorrow. Can you go ahead and transcribe that for me? So even though your software is writing the record for you, you still have to go through everything, fix it, turn it into what. That's
my question. That was my, wow.
It's like doing a term paper every day. That's due.
No way.
Yeah. So for me, I just thought, this is not worth it, and I'm not really enjoying my life. And so I decided to put that aside. And I ended up working at a really, really cool place called Rocky Mountain Institute. And it was a think tank for, at that time, they were working on like a Prius. They were developing that back then. And this was in 94, 95. And so that was something that did not exist. We didn't have cars that you plugged in back then. So they were working on that. They were working on sustainability for the planet. And that was one of the coolest jobs I had. I learned.
And what was you roll in as a?
I rolled in, and again, without experience, I just said I need a job. And, I can't even remember how I found out about it. I don't remember that part of it. But it was in Snowmass, Colorado. So that's right between Glenwood Springs and Aspen. And it's just this beautiful, beautiful location up the street from Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell's house, and up the street from Don Henley's house.
Nice.
Yeah. And Hunter S. Thompson would just drive around. And so it was just a cool time in my life.
Yeah.
So I walked in, I started doing kind of the admin stuff. And then I moved on to doing grant writing. So I would write grants and send them off and get funding for it was a nonprofit. So it was really cool.
That's amazing. Let's go back to 12 years old. And you don't need to tell me the full story.
And I'm not over exaggerating on that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's what I want. I want to know. Was it like, were you already chomping at the bit to like be productive, make money, or was it that and a combination of your dad was like, get your ass a job?
Yeah. My dad was he worked for the state of Florida, and he He kind of was an old school recruiter. I mean, if he got people jobs, so he would place people in certain jobs, and that was his thing. He was the best at it, and he, also thought that he thought everyone needed to be employed, including me. And so he, just started early and would just say, get a job. And so I started the typical babysitting stuff, but as soon as I could actually legally work, I got a job at, a gym. And so the Scandinavian Health Spa was the place to be. It was this huge kind of chain. And it was cool because my dad taught me how to interview, and he taught me how to be persistent on following up with the people that I was interviewing with. So I was 14 years old. He would drive me to he drove me to the place to interview. Again, I had no experience, obviously. I'm 14. I'm like, I've been babysitting for a while. Experience, hire me. And he taught me to follow up, and that I think got me the job, because I did have to be persistent and follow up. So that was a cool lesson.
That's a great lesson. And that's a key lesson in sales. I mean, follow up and be persistent in as nice as we can be, I suppose. So that's cool. So in your youth, let's say did you go to college quick?
I did. So I went to junior college. The tough thing, so my dad went to Syracuse, and he, for whatever reason, his belief was that college was BS. That was not my belief. I really, I look back on that, and that's one of the things that sort of, it's something that I wish I had more guidance on it. Or, I mean, my parents didn't sit down and say to me, let's fill out applications. I have two sons, and we've always talked to them as if, when you go to college. So for me, that was not the case.
Assumptive close.
Yeah. And I went to a great high school, and did fairly well. I mean, if I didn't like the class, I wouldn't really do as well, or if I didn't like the teacher, but I mean, I did well, and I easily could have gotten into a school. So my dad, his belief was, this was fed to me, from a young age. College is BS, degrees are BS, and why that was his belief, I'm not really sure, because school to my family on his side is such a big thing. So it must have been his his hang up.
Yeah. And he's like, I'm a successful recruiter. I didn't need to go to school.
Exactly.
Wasted money or something.
Right.
Something.
Yeah. And I mean, he went to a prep school. He went to
groomed.
Syracuse. So he fed that to me. I still, on my own, signed up for the junior college in town, took a psychology class. I loved psychology. That was just what I was interested in. And I wanted to get into psychology because I wanted to help people. And so he said, psychology is BS. And so I was, we would kind of banter back and forth on that one. And so I did go for a bit. And I've got tons of credits from college, but I never got my degree. So it's one of those things that sort of has always kind of weighed on me. And it was tough for me to have to tell my kids that. I didn't want to tell them that, because I didn't want them to think, well, you're successful. Why should I get my degree? So
yeah, it's so interesting.
My 19-year-old finally figured it out. He's like, dude,
wait a minute.
Yeah.
Wait a minute here. Where's your plaque? I guess what I'm digging for is I think it's really interesting that our parents are so funny, right? They're like, go be smart and do these things as long as they're the things that I want you to be smart in and what I want you to do.
Exactly.
Right? It's such an interesting dynamic. But when does it kick in? Like from our previous conversations, we both have talked about the sense of like needing to be successful or be productive or have goals or have work to feel like whole, right? I think you'd confirm that? Yeah,
completely. I feel like for me, that was, that hit me when I was taking classes, that was something that that was in me when I was in high school. That was in me when I was at a young age, when I was, as long as I can remember, I felt like I needed to have the courage, the strength, and the motivation. I used to, that was sort of my mantra to myself, or I guess my prayer, or whatever you'd call it. I would just say, give me the strength, courage, and motivation to do the best that I can. And so I made that up. Nobody taught me that. And that was something that I always, said. And so I think the minute that I was able to make the decision on what I wanted to do, what classes I wanted to take, I found the court reporting class. I signed myself up for it. My dad said, get a skill, but he never said, oh, this would be a good one for you. So it was just in me. It was just something that was there. Right
out of the gate almost.
I think so.
It's like you hit puberty and it was just like,
I think so. So
interesting.
But again, I would also rebel and kind of self-sabotage. And that's just, it was like my shtick, so I would do well in class, but then I would get a D in history or something like that, because I didn't like the teacher. If you're not a good history teacher, the class can suck. So,
right.
And I love history now, which is kind of funny. I'm kind of a history buff, but so I would do that, and I'd have all A's and B's, and then I'd have this D on my report card, and I would get grounded. And I knew what the consequences were going to be if I didn't do my best and got something below a C, but I did it anyway. And so I just, it's
almost like a
self-sabotage kind of thing. I don't know what to call it, but it was definitely a pattern of mine when I look back.
Maybe a little rebellious side or no?
Rebellion, but then I would be punishing myself. So I feel like it was rebellion. And, but I knew that I was going to be the one that would suffer. So maybe I just wanted negative attention. I don't know what it was.
It's interesting. Not to overanalyze it or anything. I think it's interesting. My own youth, like I was always, you're smart, you should do better. But as a young kid, I just didn't care. Right. And so, or I don't know what it was. Like, I definitely did not have the discipline to be successful the way schools are designed for you to be successful.
Right.
And, so somewhere along the line, I was like, all right, I am going to be successful. And then it just was like that seed was planted, or I don't know, maybe. I know I do know, but
I can relate to that. I can definitely relate to that. I mean, you weren't being successful the way that, schools made it available to you. We aren't all just this one size fits all type, as kids, especially we're not that one size fits all. Cookie cutter kid.
Yeah. I tended to challenge a bit more. I tended to be like, this is asinine. Can't we look at it this way? And they'd be like, you're too young to think like that. Or what are you talking about? Where does that even come from?
But remember algebra, and you would sit there and go, when am I ever going to use this? I was that kid for sure.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make any sense to me why I would need this class. I could see why, understanding what goes on in the world and where we are today and why in terms of world history. But, algebra, I don't know. I'm not going to be whatever. I just, it was, to me, seemed useless.
Yeah.
And thus far has been.
Yeah. So far, it's still the case. So when you're doing the stenography stuff, are you driven to succeed at stenography? I know that might sound like a weird question, but are you you are?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yep. So then you go get the new admin job, and you're at the in Snowmass at the cool tech-ish company, and you're like, cool, I'm gonna be successful here. You're already thinking, or that idea is continuing.
Well, it's interesting because at Rocky Mountain Institute, they had people that would, they got letter after letter after letter from people, begging for an internship there. And all these people were students at, Dartmouth, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, the best of the best schools that you can possibly imagine. And so those are all the people that I worked with. So it would sort of like really put the spotlight on my insecurity about not having that degree. And I kind of wanted to like stay under the radar in terms of not highlighting that part of myself. So it was a weird sort of tiny torture piece of that job where I loved it and I was driven to do well, but I also was very aware of, what I saw as shortcomings.
So were you trying to, so you're like, let's not highlight as much as possible, not highlight the lack of degree, let's call it, or the lack of pedigree, perhaps.
Yeah, both. Right.
Okay. So I don't know if overcompensate's the right word, or were you like in a general, I'm going to keep under the radar and not shine too bright? Or were you like, well, let's park the lack of pedigree again over here, but I'm really going to shine over here?
I thought of it as just doing the best that I could at whatever I was doing at that
I love it.
And if I was doing admin stuff, I was going to do my best job. I wasn't going to slack off or just, I mean, as my dad, can I swear just a tiny bit? I wasn't going to be half-assed about what I was doing.
Love it. Yep.
I wasn't going to be a half-assed.
Love it. So just a general, like, that's interesting. I love that idea. I'm like, if I'm going to go work somewhere, I want to be able to want to do it and do it well. I don't want to just do it half-ass. That's a total thing that my father would say as well. Exactly. Is so funny.
Yeah.
You just came back.
I mean, and my mom is the same way. She's her work ethic. She's 70 years old and she still works because she wants to. Yeah. And she is kind of, if you're doing something, if you're doing a project, if you're doing whatever it is, you're not going to not finish it. You're not going to do, she would say, don't do this half-assed also. So, together, my parents both were that way.
So there's definitely that, consciously or subconsciously or genetically you've inherited it. And I that's good nor bad. It's just, it is what it is, right? The illusion, right? Like, yeah, it's like the illusion that that's bad or good is just that.
Exactly.
All right. So, and really the point of this again is like, we could skip to the end point and been like, I've worked hard for a long time and now I don't have to, at least in this moment. And it's really hard to do nothing. Right. So we're just trying to get to that point and be like, yeah, it's interesting how I've worked hard. I've had success, perhaps more success than you thought along the way too. I don't know. Right. And
I would say,
what's that?
I would say, yeah.
Yeah. So cool. So you're at the Rocky Mountain Institute, and I just wanted to give the listeners a framework for why are you telling us this long story? Well, it's because you and I have in common
the layers. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I don't know how old you are. I think you're my age. So I'm 50.
I'm 49.
49. Cool. So I'm 50. I forget, 52.
When's your birthday?
Mine is August 2nd.
Okay. Coming up. Yeah. Mine's November.
Oh, cool. Yeah, geez, I'm going to be 53 before you're 50. Huh.
Well, it all blends together after.
It all blends. I'm like, I'm 50. Just saying it now. I'm like, wait a minute.
I know. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I am. But how we have I think that was what was very interesting. We have a few things in common that let's get to some of that. Why not? Let's skip this whole talking job stuff is whatever. I think the interesting things that we clicked on. So first off, how did we meet? So myself, I'm just trying to follow the breadcrumbs of life right now, right? Instead of being like, no, I'm focused on a goal. I'm like, there's a breadcrumb. Let's go follow it. And so what's that?
I'm the same way. That's me. Yeah.
Yeah. So mutual friend, Craig Waterman. Hi, Craig, if you're listening to this.
Craig.
Yeah. Says, hey, you two should talk. So it's like, all right, let's talk. And then of course, one of the common things that we have that I wrote down is we're both in recovery. Is it cool if we discuss that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Awesome. And so within that, as you and I are sort of are the key thing that we connected on was the old modality of success, if you want to say it like that, became more painful than the benefits it was providing.
Yes.
Is that a good way to say it? Or right? Yeah. Like it's like going, well, for me anyway, I don't want to speak for you.
But we caught up before, our, this today, a couple weeks ago. And yes, you're absolutely correct on that. It was no longer something that I enjoyed doing.
Yeah.
And I say for now, because I just am always going, you never know. I mean,
you never know.
You never know.
But it can be a shock to the system for people like you and I who are, for whatever reason, driven for success and whatever that means, whether it's financial, like I need a validation point. I need cash, riches. And that, I don't mean to say like massive, but like, here's a big paycheck. Yes, I'm worthy. Or here's your sales plaque. Yes, I'm worthy. Or, you're number 1 or number 10 or whatever it is. You're getting higher up the ladder.
Something to rank yourself, something, validation that you are good or you're smart or you are strong and courageous, whatever it is. But I totally get that. And it has been a struggle in the sense of I haven't been, it was a super stressful job. I was in tech sales and it never stops. I mean, you're never, especially now that you can work from home, you can do meetings from home. I was doing work with people all over the world. And so it didn't matter what time zone they were in. I would still do a meeting with somebody at 11 o'clock at night, wherever they were. If they're in Japan, great, let's talk. So, and that was just something that I would not ever say no to. It was just something that I expected. No one expected it of me. I expected it of myself. So that, and I couldn't relate with burnout. I thought, oh, well, I'll never burn out. Well, I burnt out. And so that was part of it. And I ended up just not being happy in terms of for the last 5 years, I worked for a company and I never we had unlimited time off, quote unquote. I never took a full vacation without working ever for 5 years. So I never really disconnected for 5 years. And I don't think that that's healthy or that you can do that. And so I just did it all the time. And for me, I just ended up needing to step away. And, but I am struggling in the sense of going, okay, I feel guilty in a way because I'm not that's so ingrained in my system of, I should be working. You should be working. There's some, in order to be, I don't know, all of those things that we just said, you need to be sort of working. And since I'm not, I feel like, oh, well, then I need to be really productive. I need to be doing something all the time, productive project, fit it, seriously, the second day that I quit my job, I painted the entire house myself. The entire house. I was just like, that's it, we're painting. I'm on this, 40-foot ladder doing, these, A-frame rooms and stuff. So that's a perfect example of what I expect. But most people would just go, I'm going to lay out for a while by the pool, kind of chill. No, I'm like, let's get 14 different swatches. It's on.
Yes. And oh my God, research the tape. What's the best corner tape? Beating tape or whatever you call it.
Exactly.
I absolutely had it in my head for many years, and I would have told people this and did tell people this, and especially under the spotlight of recovery too. So people that I get an opportunity to, mentor or whatever, this idea that we're meant to be productive as humans. And it's an easy attitude to have when you find it easy to be productive according to whatever productivity matrix how I see that, right? And so to have that shift or that shock to the system, the identity crisis, the midlife crisis, the whatever, it can be really unnerving.
Exactly. Identity crisis. That's perfect. I was telling, we have I admitted to my 19-year-old son that I probably was having a midlife crisis because I was telling him that I wanted to get a dog. We already have a dog. We have he's 5.
Yes.
He's a German Shepherd rescue, and he loves my husband more than anybody else. And no, he doesn't really pay attention to most of us.
Yes.
And so I said, I really miss having a yellow lab. I want to get a yellow lab puppy. And both of my kids were like, why are we thinking about another dog? It will be chaos. There will be more poop. There will, to all these reasons of why we shouldn't get one.
Yeah.
Like you said, you have kids going, that sounds great, let's get a puppy. They were like, this sounds terrible. What's going on with you?
Yeah.
And so my 19-year-old son and I were talking about it, and he said, well, with our dog, Fenway is his name. He said, you get what you put into it. And I thought, okay, old soul, I'm hearing you. And then I said, and then I admitted, I'm probably just having a midlife crisis. You've gone off to college. I need to get a puppy. Yeah. So I'm not getting a puppy. It made me kind of look in and go, yeah, what are the real reasons?
Yeah.
So
that learning how to, I don't know, who is it? Immanuel Kant, the man's major issue is not being able to sit in a room alone by himself or something like that. The more I hear that, I'm like, yes, that is a human's main malfunction. I might have misquoted who said that, but I love that thought of like, gosh, can I just sit by myself and do nothing and be nothing, perhaps?
Right, exactly. Why do we feel this need that we must be producing at all times?
Yeah.
I had been working on, I started a blog. I really like writing, and I started a blog, and I talked about recovery. That's my main focus. And I haven't written, I was posting very consistently every week. And that was my goal. Every week I'm going to be consistently writing. And then I had two, I think I told you this, two of my relatives passed away within a week of each other, two uncles. One had been sick for a long time, and the other just sort of suddenly got sick. He ended up getting lymphoma, and it, just all of it went downhill quickly. And so that one was really unexpected, but it was within a week of each other. One passed away on a Wednesday and the other passed away on a Wednesday. And so I just sort of found myself taking a step back and doing what I think I'm really actually supposed to be doing, taking a step back, appreciating where I am in my own life right now, appreciating the people around me, just really kind of giving myself a break, giving myself a chance to walk on the beach if I want to, not feel like I need to get somewhere and do something. And I found myself stepping back from writing with the blog. I just wasn't ready. I knew I've already written, a part of what I'm going to post next, but, and it's about perfectionism. And I thought, well, I'm not perfectly ready to release it, but I found myself feeling guilty because I went, I haven't followed my regular schedule of releasing something every week. While at the same time, I just lost two family members. And so I thought, give yourself an effing break, Right.
I love that.
So yeah, I'm working on that, of giving myself a break and just appreciating where you are. I mean, life is just so short, and don't, be so hard on yourself. Don't think you have to paint the whole house.
What's the hurry? If you saw the house where I live, this house, I bought it as a remodel project. And I'm just looking around because there is about 5 things. I've had it about 3 years. There's lots of stuff that's slowly but surely. And I feel like it's a picture of my life right now. It's a representation
of work in progress, right?
It's a work in progress.
Your life. It's a work in progress.
Yeah. I like to I feel like, again, like you and I, it's like, hey, step back, smell the roses. We're 50 years old. Like, oh my gosh, there's like my kids, or not that you were ever discounting your kids, but it's like there's so much more richness right in front of us, and how perhaps people come to that more naturally out of the womb versus I need to go, I don't know, need to be obsessed about other things for a while.
And being in that state of mind of what's next. I'm always thinking what's next. And I kind of relate that also to being in sales, because you're thinking, okay, I'm living in this quarter. What's next quarter? How am I going to plan for it? So, it's that mindset of here I am now, and then make sure that you're planning ahead. So I think that I skipped the whole thing of appreciating the now and was, really focusing more on what's next, what am I supposed to be doing? which I don't, what's next? I mean, maybe nothing. So
Maybe,
deal
right?
with what you have right now.
Yeah. I love that. Maybe it's nothing, right?
You might not be here tomorrow, not to be glum, but you might not be here tomorrow. So appreciate, where you are today.
And the idea of like, well, we could go down lots of rabbit holes. Well, I will. I'll say that the idea of like what brings us happiness in life, like it's like in recovery, there's the idea of you've got to be of maximum service or be of service to others, right? And so the sales side of me, the competitive side of me starts stacking up the metrics. How many people am I helping? How am I helping them? How many people know that I'm helping? Where, right? And where I'm just continue to get so much input that like smiling is enough. Sometimes like a smile to somebody is enough to be of service.
I agree.
Right. And it's so powerful. Like the butterfly effect, the ripple effect of just that simple thing.
Yeah, because you never know what someone's going through that on that day, and that you being kind to them can make a world of difference in recovery or out of recovery.
Absolutely.
Holding the door for somebody, or just smiling, like you said, saying hi, or just being helpful and nice to we need more kindness in this world. I think that it's almost a surprise or a shock to a person, like, oh, you're
yeah
you're being nice. Why are you being nice?
Yeah, I think it's such a cool concept too, or way to think. Like there's people that are super A-typey, you and me, and we're actually not even that A-typey. Like there's next level A-typey, right?
Yeah,
but
exactly.
But on the curve, we're close. We're up there a little bit. But how non-A-types are perhaps, gosh, I wish if I could just have that drive or that vision, or which I don't have anymore.
I wonder though if they feel that way, because my husband is not an A-type, and I think he is happy as a, I'm going to say happy as a lark. I don't know where that came from, but because I'm almost 50, so I just he has no desire to be an A-type and isn't, and is happy. He doesn't really worry about that. He sleeps like a baby,
right? Oh my God.
Yeah, just doesn't worry about things. He's just happy and kind of floating through, and
ignorance is bliss.
He's not like, wow, I wish I had more drive and was an A-type. I think
right, suffering like you.
Yeah, he's like, why don't you take a breather? I mean, he would say to me when I was working at the company I worked for, the one I was mentioning, for 5 years and never took a vacation. He'd be like, why don't you take a break and do some yoga or something? He would just encourage me. And I'm like, I can't, I'm not done with this right now. I'll do that when I'm done. Well, I was never done, I just was always wound up. So
kids, this is a warning sign for, or whatever. What would we call that? We're not a warning
public
sign.
Service message.
Yeah, this is a public service message.
Is that what we call it? I don't know.
Yes. Yeah, you get what I'm saying though.
Yeah.
So trying to, as we look for our new motivation or new meaning or our new identities, you and I, one of the things I wrote down here was trying to sort out how to be of service within the online world.
Mm-hmm.
But we've got this recovery side of us that we're passionate about, perhaps. And then we've got the traditions where it's like, hey, kind of keep some anonymity in there. So it's like, all right, I think that was another thing that I think we were.
Yeah, it's conflicting, I feel. For me, it's been conflicting a little bit.
Yeah.
Yes. So when I've been in recovery since May of 2016, and I got sober when I was working for a startup, and that's really not an easy thing to do. And because everyone's drinking all the time. I mean, it is, you can easily drink at your desk and no one will say anything. It's something, it's just not at like 10 a.m. or something, but if you grab a beer,
normal time, like 1, perhaps.
You can grab a beer at, 3 or 4,
right.
you're okay. And no one's going to go, you're drinking on the job. What are you doing? Someone will go, did you get me one? That would be the next
There
question.
we go. Yes.
And so that was just a way of life. And so it was tough to get sober because I felt like, first of all, these people are depending upon me to party with them. What are they going to do without me? And then the next piece of it was I felt this weird sense of almost shame and embarrassment that I was in recovery for some reason, because I think it was a secret. I needed to be anonymous. It was, it was something that I didn't talk about with friends of mine who were very close friends of mine at work. They knew that I stopped drinking, but I wouldn't say to them, hey, I'm in recovery, I'm going to go to a meeting. I wouldn't say that to them. So I had this weird sort of conflicted side of that where I felt like this double life almost. So when I started writing about recovery, I was conflicted because I had always been really quiet and private about it. My family didn't know. My family on my side knew, but my family on my husband's side did not know. They knew I wasn't drinking, but they didn't know that I was in recovery. And because I think that, there is a stigma, and 5 years ago, certainly it's being a little bit, it is becoming destigmatized for sure. People are talking about, hey, I'm in recovery, I have an issue, I have a problem with this, that, the other, and I'm getting help for it. And that's something to be proud of. But, 5 years ago, it was different even. So things have changed, but I have been conflicted about kind of spilling.
Oh, sorry, to interrupt. I think I don't really, it's interesting that, as I told you, 17 years and 9 months old was when the first layer of addiction was pulled away from me, right? The drinking and the drugging. 17 years old.
I know I never asked you how that kind of came about because that's an amazing thing.
It is. I had a girlfriend that she liked to say it like this, there's the whole hitting bottom thing and you got to get to this certain mental insanity. And she's like, just think how insane you were to have to get sober at 17. And I was like, oh my God, I never thought of that way. Or maybe you saw
future. Maybe you had enough insight to say, okay, this is not going to end well.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that was it. And my family had blazed the trail of recovery for me. So mom first, then father. And
good.
Yeah. So, they laid the foundation. Mom took a few tries, but father effectively, I think he got sober. He got sober when I was hitting puberty, and it was almost like he handed the alcoholic bug or torch to me. Like up until that point, whenever I would drink, I would absolutely lose control, but I didn't have the obsessive nature to need to do it all the time. Right.
That's exactly me. Also, I would lose control and, throw up every time or whatever it was.
Yeah.
I didn't have that obsessive compulsive thing to, I have to have it.
Yeah.
A while later.
Yeah. Yep. So dad gets sober, and then that's when it kicked in for me. I was not only like, oh, I started finding more and more circumstances or more opportunities for that. But anyway,
I feel like that's a common theme with a lot of people where they say that they started drinking or whatever it is that their problem is, that they started when they hit puberty, or, hey, I started drinking when I was 14. That type of thing.
Yeah.
It's a story that I've heard a lot.
A lot. Yeah. And so, I talk about the tradition. So, the idea that like being respectful of the 12-step groups that I may partake in, because I don't want to be the representation of that on a public level, so that if and when, I'm not saying I will, but if I were to come off the rails in a extreme way, people are like, oh, those things don't work, right?
Exactly.
Or there's plenty of us in recovery, in sobriety, that do some stupid ass stuff in recovery. So they're like, wait, you're supposed to be sober. Why are you still being a son of a bitch, for example, right?
Angels, yeah.
Yeah. So I just try to be respectful of that tradition side of things. Like, honestly, I don't really care so much if people know or don't know. Like, I think for me, the one of the most interesting things about recovery, I think, and that I see in people, having the bulk of my life has been in recovery now, is how people will get into recovery, perhaps get into a 12-step program, and then they're like, oh my God, I'm an angel. I wish the rest of the world was an angel like me.
Right.
Right. And it's like,
exactly.
Right. When it's like,
you
well,
should
wait
do
a minute.
what I'm doing and be just like I am, because
Right.
what
Yeah.
I'm doing is the perfect thing.
Yeah. We're in reality, it's like, we're just trying to get to baseline. We're just trying to get up to speed with the bulk of the world. Right.
Exactly.
Or the idea that I've found, like, the spiritual stuff that recovery has given me, right? There's the illusion that, like, well, nobody else has it because they didn't find it the way I found it. When in reality, there's so many channels and outlets for spiritual connection, if that's what you're looking for, right? And the illusion that that's even required. Like, I know people that seem to be very spiritually centered, spiritually fit, who don't have to try. They just are like, right? And sorry to
I'm
go on
thinking
this
of a friend of mine that is that person. She's just,
yeah,
however you would say it. She's just Zen. She's very Zen, and doesn't have to try. It's just who she is. She's got like this aura of goodness around her.
Yeah.
And I also thought, I don't know, well, you were 17, so it was probably, you didn't have as much time as I did to mess up, but
yeah,
we could fit a lot into a small amount of time. So who knows what you did, but, but, I thought, oh, well, when I quit drinking, I will, life will be easier. Things will kind of come together. Things will be easier. And all of my problems are because of drinking. Well, that of course isn't the case. And my life has actually been harder in certain respects since entering recovery. But the cool thing is that I have been totally present for these things and not checking out. I don't have this desire to not go, life is what it is. It's going to show up either way. And so to have, I kind of looked at it almost as a blessing, going, all right, instead of looking at this as such a negative thing, you've had these things happen to you. Look at them as lessons for you to be grateful that you're able to kind of walk through this, while being sober and not reaching for something to, check out completely.
Yeah. I love that. I have two thoughts. One was going to be take us down another rabbit hole, but I will go there for 1 sec. Actually, it just eluded me, so never mind. Well, no, it's coming back.
I think your brain works like mine.
So for me, I feel like the podcast for me and interviewing people has been really fun, because I've definitely going outside of, like, I'm interviewing like what we like to call normies, right?
Yeah. Normies are interesting.
Those of you,
they are.
So those of you who are listening who are not perhaps afflicted with chemical dependency issues,
right?
But really, like, I was thinking of how a normal person just looks at me and the awarenesses that I haven't come up with, and they just are like, duh,
right,
duh.
Well, you can be a normie and not be enlightened.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
But I think that there's a lot of enlightened normies out there, is what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
That again are like, I won a gold star for one of my favorite stories is when I quit smoking when I turned 30. I was very proud that I had quit smoking, and
I quit smoking also.
Yeah, and that's a gnarly habit.
A big deal, yeah.
It's a big deal, and after quitting and starting and quitting and starting, and then,
oh my gosh,
right, and then throwing the packs of cigarettes out the window. That's it, and then the next day,
like, I'm throwing it away. And this is gross, but I've thrown packs of cigarettes in the garbage, and then gone and got them, not dug through garbage, banana peels and stuff like that. But if they're resting on the top of the garbage, I've gone back and shot the patch.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or I'd wear the patch, I tread the patch to quit, and I'd rip the patch off and just smoke.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's not to say that normies, I mean, plenty of people that may not have serious chemical dependency issues might be like trying to quit vaping or get off the nicotine, or there's plenty of weird little things that we can do as humans. But I was very proud of the fact that I had quit smoking. And I've been generally speaking, I was this dichotomy of smoking cigarettes, but then I'd be at the gym, eating healthy,
me too,
having chicken, right? Just this in weird yeah. And so, I'm talking to my brother and his significant other, Lisa. This is obviously a bit ago, years ago, decades ago by now. Oh my gosh.
now decades.
But, yeah. But I'm, give me my cookie. I quit smoking. And right. Yeah. And Lisa stone cold looks at me and is like, you never should have started in the first place. Like, you shouldn't have been doing it anyway. Like, you want to, or like, I no longer yell at my kids. And people are like, well, yeah, probably, it's sort, I don't know, there's just so many.
It is good to be validated for those things. I mean, you do want someone to say that's a really good job anyway. It's, yes, should we never have started? Yeah. I mean, that's true for a lot of people and a lot of things, but it is nice to hear, hey, really good job. My grandmother quit smoking after, decades and decades. My grandmother smoked so much that when she was pregnant with her third child, she waited to go to the hospital. She was in labor, having labor pains, third kid. So she's not in a big rush, so that she could stay home and smoke. She totally said, I waited until until the very last minute, because I didn't want to. So she's smoking back in the day, when people just smoke when you're pregnant.
It's insane.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
But she should have never started in the first place, but but she quit. And I was like, good job, Grammy. That's a great job.
Yes. Right. Now and then. Right. Yeah. Right. I think that Lisa's point was tired of hearing about all the things I was quitting and how I was so special. I think that was the thing. I could be arrogant, right? I'm better than you.
Yeah. She had a different
I quit smoking.
Yeah. Uh-huh. She had a different view of what was going on.
Yeah. Like, look, now I've quit this. And she's just tired. She's like, look, you're just you're just getting to where the rest of us are. Right. Like, again, along those lines,
I'm sticking up for you because I relate with what you're saying, because we both need validation. So I'm like, well, it's good to get the gold star. I mean, why can't you have it?
Yeah.
Come on, Lisa. So.
Yeah, right. Get on board, Lisa. Why you got to be a downer? No.
Yeah, it's only because I'm the same way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I could be arrogant and judgmental, almost like I'm better than you because I smoked and quit and you never did.
Right. Look how much I've done. Now, what have you done?
Yes.
Not so much that part, but yeah.
Yeah. That's a good rabbit hole. I had written down, your dad passed away, and it was heavy and perhaps not in a pretty way. And if you're open to talking about that, I think that's one of the most profound moments for you.
Yeah, I'm okay talking about it. I don't have, problem sharing anything about, why he passed away. So my dad was an alcoholic. He was a functioning alcoholic. He was in Vietnam. When he came home, he had tremendous issues. He volunteered to go into Vietnam because his dad was in World War II. He thought that was his duty to do so. He loved his country, signed up, came home and went, oh, I'm not having the same kind of the gold star, like you're saying, but in a totally different way. Where there were no parades when he came home from Vietnam, like World War II, people were spitting on soldiers. And so it was just a whole new thing. And his drinking escalated. I mean, I can remember as a kid, him drinking and, them doing other stuff around me. They were, it was pot, but I call it pot. I don't call it weed, but
Yeah.
they smoked pot in front of me. It was like the hippie days and stuff. And so that was sort of the light partying time for my parents, where I remember it being a happy time. And then it just, it changed. I can remember when
Quick question. Was your father like on the front lines in Vietnam, or did he go through, not that this matters,
He wasn't
I'm
on
just
the front
curious.
line. He was, he drove convoys. And so he was the leader of the, I can't think, he led the convoys.
Yeah.
And so they would drive through villages. And I think that, I can't even imagine, the stress on someone, you're leading a convoy of 9 or 10 trucks or whatever it is to go deliver supplies to other, sorry.
No, that's all right. You're a number one target at that point, as far as, and I'm sure you're driving through extreme circumstances as well, right? Like that damn son.
No. Sorry about that.
No, that's quite all right.
It's my Apple. I can't. All right. Sorry about that.
That's
so
okay.
Yeah, I can't imagine being in that situation. And so anyway, when he came home, he went through a lot of heavy stuff.
Absolutely.
His drinking escalated, and so
But I get back to, it was a happy time, and then then so go on with that.
It was a happy time. So we lived in Massachusetts. I live in Cape Cod. I mean, it was the kind of idyllic childhood. My little schoolhouse was that idyllic schoolhouse that looked like the little Norman Rockwell town, and we were fine. He would party, but it was not anything that was out of control.
Yeah.
And so when my mom decided, I think it would be a great idea for us to move to South Florida. No, people can only hear me, but they can't see the look I just gave you.
Yes.
All right. Yeah. Let's leave this great place, especially where all of our, my extended family is, and move away. So she wanted to do it. So we did. And that's when his heavy drinking started. He started getting, we moved from a really small town to Hollywood, Florida, that, was in the midst of a lot of, the Cuban migration was happening, and people were just showing up on the beach in rafts. It was, Scarface time. I mean, that was like, that was what was.
That was legit. That's what was going on.
It was the murder capital of the world, and so that's just what was happening, and that freaked him out. His paranoia skyrocketed, and his drinking just took off, and he. From that point on, really was was an alcoholic. His drinking was out of control. We would go over to friends' houses, and he was always the one that got just hammered, wasted. I mean, I've seen him fall. I've seen things that kids should not see. And, of course, it led to fighting between my parents, but they always stayed together, and they've been together since they were 16 years old. So, that was something that was very shameful to me, that he was an alcoholic.
Yeah, I think what the most, when you were talking to me about, I think it was when your father passed away, that sort of was maybe the trigger that pushed you to the final, the death knells of your own drinking, but the I don't know if horror is the right word, but the heaviness, the darkness around seeing somebody drink themselves to death.
Yes.
Right. Like, and how you're watching your father literally being killed by the poisoned nature of alcohol. So there's the physical torment of that. And to see that is
to watch it is crazy.
It's crazy.
He was killing himself. And of course, people say that, stop smoking, it's going to kill you. I mean, yeah, I know. Sure. I know what it does to me. Of course, his daughter went to doctor's visits with him where they said, if you continue to drink, you will die.
Yes.
And it was hard for me to grasp why he wouldn't, he would drink that night. And so it was hard for me to understand, like, how can you do that? You're doing it to yourself, but you're also doing it to the people that you love. I mean, don't you love us enough to stop? That was a big thing for me that I struggled with. And so when he physically couldn't drink anymore, if he drank, he only drank beer, and so people always think that that's harmless. I don't drink hard liquor. Well, no, beer will also kill you. So he drank, light beer, the cheapest beer that you could get. That's what he drank. It was super cheap. And so when he was unable to drink anymore physically, I mean, if he drank, he would throw up. If he, throw up blood. And he lost his will to live. I saw him lose that only thing in life that mattered anymore. He then had nothing to look forward to. And so he very quickly went into a big decline there where it was just like he didn't want to fight for his life. And he ended up having a perforated colon and it ended up having sepsis, and they tried to operate on him. They did operate on him. We took him to the emergency room, and they as much as they could, of course, but his brain was zapped. So when he brought out of surgery, he was essentially a vegetable, which is weird because to me, he always said, hey, if it's like foreshadowing. He said, if I'm ever a vegetable, don't let me, pull the plug. Don't let me live through that. So it's weird to have, and he's probably saying this to me when I was 9. So it's not like
he knew the day was coming.
He took me aside and said, this is how I want to be treated if I'm a vegetable. But he became a vegetable, and he could not, he could open his eyes, but nothing would happen. And so he was in the hospital for 2 weeks, and he then was not absorbing any nutrients. They were giving him liquid food. And they said at that point, he's not absorbing anything at all. And so, we did have to make the decision to let him go. And so he did. And he was only 64. And it was sad because, we've got 2 kids. He's got a huge family that loves him. Yeah. And it was something that I always knew was going to happen. I never saw my dad as living to be some 95-year-old grandpa. I just always, I always knew that he was going to die young because I knew how he drank. When he got up on Saturday morning, again, he was a functioning alcoholic, never missed work. Sometimes if he was super hungover, but Saturday morning, he started drinking the minute he got up, drank all weekend long. At 6 a.m. he'd start.
Yeah. I think that the most poignant part of this story to me is your father no longer can drink because his body can't take it. It's been so poisoned that it can't take it anymore. And so it's no longer worth living.
Right.
And then that's it, right? Then it's pretty quick thereafter that whatever he passes away, whatever that time.
He lost all those things that were interesting to him. Somewhere along the line, those things like the wheels came off, and those things became no longer of interest.
Yeah, we hear that. We hear the terms jails, institutions, or death, right? Like that's where people in the throes of certain chemical addictions, whether it's alcoholism, if you believe in that, some people definitely don't, some do. I will say that non-judgmentally, but to be on the front lines of it, of your family, and to see, like, I knew this girl, or I know this girl, and this was relatively recently, within the last 5 years, and it actually kind of shook me up because 2 kids, relatively new, let's say 2 and 4, 3 and 5, or something like that, somewhere in there, relatively young kids, right? And the husband, so young family, and the husband, she's like, look, drinking is killing you. It's destroying our family. What is the choice going to be? The family or the alcohol? And I choose the drinking. See ya. And it's like, that's just such a radical concept. And and to have again, you know, I'm sort of in it all the time because I'm engrossed in recovery, but again, I don't know, for whatever reason. And so then when you're telling me the story about your father, it just, I don't know, these kinds of stories affect me more now than they maybe would have previous. So when you say that, like, to be in that state where it's like, to be that addicted, or
it's got that much of a grip on you.
That much of a grip on you.
And
Yeah.
you know, and my mom was never the type that was ever going to say, I'm going to leave you unless you stop. You know, she never did that. And she never would have. And I tried once not talking to my dad because I said, you know, I can't deal with this anymore. I'm not going to talk to you until you stop. He wasn't going to stop. And so I just, after a week, called him and was like, I'm sorry. I don't want to do that. I was like, look, that's not realistic. So,
let me ask you. Yeah. I'll go ahead. Let me ask you. So that was just the physical side. I think that some people lose track of like the physical, forget about the depression or the state of mind, anxiety, the spiritual, just like, I'm just talking about really what I wanted to point out is we got a couple things going on with your father. And I don't mean that, God bless your father, right?
He was a great guy.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. And it's okay to, you know, to talk about it. I mean, and he would encourage us to do what we need to do. He would never say, you know, you don't talk about me, you know.
Yeah. So well, I love the, you don't need to answer this, but I love the profound impacts that your father had on you in your youth that clearly served you well. And then we get to find balance with these ideals that are right, that our parents put on us, right? Like, you will work forever. And it's like, well, that served me,
you're
but
12,
maybe I can temper it.
You must get a job.
Yeah.
And I think the really important part to point out too, and I know you know this, is that, you know, when you have a problem and when you are an alcoholic, whatever, it's like, that's not what defines you, and it's not who you really are. And you still are a good person, and there are still all these other really great things that you contributed to other people's lives. That's just the sickness that's holding you back from living to your best potential, just for yourself, you know, forget the people around you, even just that you feel better, not only physically, but just, you know, your soul, you know, it takes your soul. I mean, eventually it will, you know, even if you're holding it together when you're 40 or whatever, however old you are, it ends up taking your soul. I read a really good quote that said something like, you know, drugs and alcohol will kill you, but before that happens, it will kill your soul, or kill your soul before it kills you. It'll kill your spirit before it kills you.
Well, and clearly, I mean, I think what was I think was so profound about your father's story were two things. One, that seeing it perhaps pushed you over the edge into maybe the final throes of your dark period, but that it also helped you. It was a blessing in disguise in that weird way that those types of things can always be. So I'm just going to reiterate to see the physical devastation and the physical pain that can be brought about by decades of lots of Coors Light or whatever it was. Coors Light.
Old Milwaukee. I don't even have it anymore.
Yeah, old mold. That's what we used to call that when we were youth. Get the old mold. But then there's also the spiritual side. There's the mental devastation, the depression, the darkness, the mental anguish, right? So pretty heavy place to be. And then enough about your father, God bless him. But I thank you for indulging that. I will let you continue on with that. I think what's interesting again is that next little bit of like, hey, when you said, that pushed me over the edge into some more darkness, but then it laid the foundation of you being able to go, wait, I don't want to go that way. So is that an accurate, was my view of that accurate? Or
I mean, it ironically, it did push me over the edge. I was extremely devastated when he died. You know, as much as I knew it was going to happen, it's sort of that it's like watching someone with cancer for years and years. You know that they're sick and they're just going to go at some point, but it's still a shock and it's still devastating. But and ironically, instead of it, you know, hitting me and saying, "Oh, that's never the way I want to live," it pushed me over the edge, and I ended up drinking more than I'd ever drank before. So he died in 2012. That's when my drinking really took off. And I drank, ironically enough, again, exactly like him. I drank, cheap beer. I drank Coors Light. That was my drink. I did not like hard alcohol because he said to me, "Don't ever drink hard alcohol. It'll really mess you up." And I had tried it a few times, and it does. It made me an insane person. So
yes,
but I drank exactly like him, which was just to me mind blowing because I thought, "What are you?" I mean, at some point, finally, I said, "What are you doing? You're going to end up dying." I mean, women don't metabolize alcohol like men do. We don't have the ability to metabolize it the way men do, but I drank like a man. I worked with a ton of guys and, that I drank just like them. I could keep up with them. That was, and I kind of, I was sort of prideful about it. Like, I can hang with the guys, but, I was drinking like him in the sense of I was losing my, not my drive. I wasn't losing my drive, but I was losing my zest for life. I guess that's the best way I can put it. I was really losing what was important to me. I was losing that sort of drive. I was losing, I like mountain biking and hiking and all that stuff. And I would kind of want to hang back and isolate. That's our big thing is we want to isolate and be with our disease or whatever it is you want to call it. But I loved doing that. I loved, hunkering down. And once I started drinking by myself, which is something that I swore I would never do, that level of an extra layer of shame and guilt and that whole thing took me to this place where I went, well, this sucks just as much as I ever imagined it would. But then I thought,
that's amazing. Oh my God, that's amazing.
It was exactly as crappy as I thought it would be. But once I did get sober, I really went, wow, that gave me, amazingly enough, it gave me a different kind of understanding and perspective of what my dad went through and why. And, it was just weird to mirror his drinking exactly. I never went, well, he drank Coors Light, I'm going to drink tequila instead,
Yeah.
And
I won't drink myself to death.
I feel like a lot of women don't like beer. I don't know, that just seems, maybe I'm stereotyping, but, what woman do you know that downs like a 12 pack or an 18 pack? It's just not, it's not a typical thing. They're like, let's get some spritzers. I don't know.
Well, I just think it's funny that you think I know women that drink, right? Like
I thought exactly when I said that. Like, what women would he think? Would he know anyway?
Yeah. Like I'm such like I'm funny. Anybody listening out there? I mean, I don't know if it's funny, but I'm trying to be more open-minded to people and their, social drinking. But I find it does nothing. That environment does nothing for me. And I don't mean that negatively. It's not.
You've been so immersed in recovery. You probably know most people from recovery. That's probably, your friend group or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just
it just happens. It does. Right. And I have friends with long time sobriety that have very rich normie friend circles, like super rich. Yeah. What's that?
Like diversity in their friendships.
Yeah, absolutely. That like, and that hasn't necessarily been my path. And like I said, this podcast is sort of pulling me more towards, like there's this, I mean, just imagine, I've just been embedded in recovery for so long, and I love it and I'm passionate about it and I get to be of service and it gives me spiritual outlet and all this stuff. But it's been really fun over the last 5 or 10 years, and then especially the last year to expand the network, especially on the spiritual front too, I would say, but I don't know why I just went down that path. But so dad dies and it takes about 9 months for you to get sober. Yeah.
Well, no. So he died in 2012 and I got sober in 2016.
Okay.
So that was a while. And
A while.
And I got sober once during that time for 4 months.
Okay.
And I relapsed for 9 months. And that 9 months was the heaviest part of my drinking. Once I relapsed, it seemed like I was 10 times worse. I mean, how they say, when you relapse, you're right back where you were. No matter, whatever you were using, it's like, boom, it's like you never stopped. Yeah. And that was the case for me. But then I was just like, I mean, maybe I missed it or I don't know what it was. The relapse was hardcore. And that was, for 9 months, like I said. And then I decided, I have to get help. I can't do this. So I needed to get help. There was no way. I needed other people outside of myself to help me get sober because I could not do it by myself. And I had trouble asking for help. So that was a big thing, to say, take me to a meeting, help me because I can't. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Then you had the moment of clarity and
yes.
And I think it's we hear that the disease theory is that if you get sober or recover or you get the drinking or the drugging out of your life, your disease is doing push-ups in the background, right? So exactly. It's just like, it's getting worse. It's like it never stopped, right? And you had that experience.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was so true. Because after those 4 months, I thought, well, now I know how, I know now. I know everything now that I need to know. After the 4 months of sobriety, I knew everything that there was to know, and I knew that I could probably dabble in drinking. Not true.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. I was thinking of an interesting parallel, or like an inverted parallel that you and I have, and perhaps, and I don't mean to speak for you, but you can answer this after I describe it. It's like, I'm like going, how do I find more people grow my network of outside of my normal recovery network, right? And you're perhaps going, well, how do you go more into that, perhaps, and maybe move away from some of your old friends or the old network?
So I did that. And it's funny, I felt, all of my friends drank, everyone that I knew drank. I was working in a startup, all right, so when I got sober, I thought, well, what am I going to do? I mean, how am I going to avoid all of my friends? How am I going to be around them? And so I did, pull away for a while. And I have reconnected with people who don't care what I do. I reconnected with people who aren't going to say, well, just try it, drink. I completely remove myself from people who, there's always those people that want to make you do something. I disconnected from those people.
Yeah.
That, if I were in my drinking phase and I liked Coors Light and they'd say, do a shot. And I'd say, no, I don't do shots. The people that went, come on, do a shot. Those are the people I disconnected with. Because I don't really want those people in my life anyway, because regardless of what it is, I don't want someone really pushing me to do something I don't want to do.
Yeah.
Well, that's not good for me,
Yeah.
So, but the people who really, they don't care if I drink or they don't care if I am not drinking. They don't care if I am, they just want to hang out with me. We just want to hang out together. Those are the people that I reconnected with, and they know I'm sober, and they're like, great. Yeah. And we move on from the conversation, and we just talk about life, and it's not a thing. It's not an issue.
Yeah. This is fun for me, actually, this episode right now, because it's the most overtly like recovery themed. Wasn't necessarily anticipating that, but I liked once we just skipped past the job history. I was like, this is just going to be, but anyway, what was like, so I along those lines of like, hey, the recovery theme, if you will indulge me some more, just we can get close to ending on this, is that, so these 2 deaths in your family, again, if you don't mind talking about death a little bit.
Oh, no, I'm good. Yep.
Uncle just passed away. Like one of the 2 people. So the Wednesday and the Wednesday experience were like a few Wednesdays ago.
Yeah, just a few Wednesdays ago.
Just a few Wednesdays ago.
Yeah, and it just sort of pulled me again. into a place of going, all right, it's part of life. But yes, yeah.
Yeah. It's just part of life. And I started watching episode 1 of what was it? The Death Experience show on Netflix.
Oh yeah, the Surviving Death.
Surviving Death. Yeah, super cool. Let's not talk on that yet. What I do want to talk on is, from my perspective, how many years sober?
Almost 5. So May
almost
6th
5
of this year, it will be 5.
Right. Some people are like, "Oh my God, that's forever." For me, I'm like, "Oh well, yeah, rookie."
I know. I'm like newly sober to you. Yeah.
Yeah, but 5 years, coming up on 5 years, a nice COVID pandemic, a couple of deaths, Wednesday and a couple of few Wednesdays ago, several deaths. Like, tell me about the recovery experience in this environment. Like, it's been thank goodness I've got this outlet, or like, give me some nuggets around that.
Do you mean more so around the COVID piece of it, or do you mean just
sort of a sober? You're 49. You've got a husband. You've got a 19-year-old and a 16-year-old.
Mm-hmm. Right? Son just went off to college. Easily a time that you could be like, oh, I'm lonely. I'm going to drink.
Yeah, right. And you've got a pandemic sort of to sort through and be like, well, not only is there the I mean, like, a pandemic's enough. Sprinkle in some reality of life. People, uncles passing away, job transition.
My sister-in-law passed away in November.
Sister-in-law, like,
really close friend of mine passed away at the beginning of the pandemic of COVID. And so, it's been crappy in that sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the whole.
So I guess my point is, like, if somebody who's not embroiled in recovery or had a recovery experience are going to go, well, gosh, that seems like a good reason to drink. But like, somehow Courtney has managed one day at a time to, seems like, with in relatively good spirits, survive through that. That's really what I think is poignant here, right? Like, okay, lots going on. Normally, somebody who would use a coping mechanism is not using that historic coping mechanism. Does that make sense? Or
yeah, and I I have been really fortunate enough that once, and I'm always afraid to say this because I almost don't want to jinx myself or something.
I love that. Yes, I get that.
I'm very much a sort of superstitious person. I'm always like, I don't want to say anything about it. And I mean, it's probably another reason I never, shouted from the top of the hills that I was in recovery. But
yes,
which
is wise, I think.
When I decided that I wanted to get sober, it took the obsession away. I've been one of those really fortunate people that I focused on recovery the way that I was told to do it. I followed the instructions. I figured I wasn't going to reinvent the wheel. And that, for me, took away that obsession. Obsession of the spirit, I think, is what they say, or whatever. The obsession of the sickness of the spirit. I can't remember the exact saying. Yeah, but
it's escaping me in the mind.
Yeah, that is what happened. And so I had been lucky enough, even through COVID and being locked in my home for a year, going through deaths and going through other, just all the other stuff that goes along with life. I haven't had that desire. So it never, occurred to me, or never hit me, again, knock on wood, because I'm superstitious, but to say, God, it would be way better to be drinking today because, I'm bored, I'm lonely, I'm angry that this is happening in the world. That has not been my story. So
that's beautiful.
I'm really, really lucky.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So it's if I'm hearing you right, it not only did it just didn't even come up as an option. So it's not like you're like, oh, I shouldn't. It's just like, it's not, that side is gone.
Yes.
One day at a time.
Yep.
God willing.
Exactly.
We don't want to jinx it.
Don't want to jinx it.
Nonetheless, that it just didn't even, it's like, I've had the same experience as well. It's like when the hard things in life have gone on, it's been like, oh, do these more healthy that those are the new habits, right? It's like been replaced by
Right.
these new habits. So if that's what I'm hearing you say, what a gift.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like I have this focus, I do end up sort of obsessing over other things. So it's not like that has been taken away from me.
Yeah.
I obsessed over getting my website up and running. I obsessed over, I end up obsessing over things. And so, now my new obsession is like fitness and making myself well. I went through a medical thing in the beginning of January of 2020. Actually, eerily again, similar to my dad, but for a different reason. I had an intestinal issue. That's a long story that we don't need to get into, but
we'll save that for the follow-up.
It's such a rabbit hole. That's like that's all like a whole family of rabbit holes. But I now I'm just obsessed with getting back to like optimal health. I don't want to just be healthy. I don't want to be optimally healthy because, of course, that's my personality, I guess.
Right. That gets back to our
Square one.
Yes, successful people who are retired and how we find the need to be successful at whatever we do.
Right.
At being unsuccessful. I'm going to be the most successful unsuccessful person you have ever seen.
Right.
And I'll show you the metrics that I've created to validate it.
Yes.
It's been super fun. We will have the opportunity to talk again, I'm sure. So
definitely.
I think that do you have anything that you wanted to say that you think I missed, or did we have any open loops we need to close, or how do you feel?
Parting words?
Yes. How do you think?
I think it was great. I like just having a conversation. I mean, I think that this has been a real conversation. I don't feel like we went through some like rigid interview or whatever it was. Yeah. We talked about life. We talked about normal stuff. We talked about things that people go through, whether they're in recovery or not, So I think that we covered a lot of bases. I mean, I think you and I could easily go down like 14 rabbit holes, but I think at the end of the day, we'd end up at square one and go, great, we made this big loop. We kind of, branched off into 15 different conversations.
Yes.
But we, completed the circle and came back around. So that's a typical conversation with me on any given day.
Yeah. I love the fact too that when people will think it's a gift or it's very generous to talk about like heavy circumstances with deaths or big life changes, and not that it's good nor bad if people do or don't, but I think it's nice to be able to have those conversations as well,
I think it goes back to what you said in the beginning, what about being successful in sales, what you were asking me about with that. I think it's just a part of being real. And I think people appreciate hearing somebody else be real, because these days, especially, everything has a filter on it. Everybody's trying to, there's so many visuals that we get of these perfect people or perfect lives, and behind it, everybody has their own stuff that they're going through. So I think when you can have a real conversation, people like to go, oh yeah, no one's perfect.
Yeah. That reminds me, did you, we had that first conversation, and we can end with this or soon. We were talking about, those people who do that seem to have the interweb success with their 5 steps of this and 3 steps to this and feel great when you do this. Ironically, I had published the 10 steps to, to publishing every day. Did you hear that episode, by the way?
That. I feel like I did hear that. Okay. And I don't think I paid attention to it. Just like we talked about. No, but I think I did hear something about here are the steps for whatever it was.
Yeah, it was just funny. It was a funny moment. Did you look at
your metrics though? Did your metrics go up for that, or what?
They did not actually. It was no. The crew that's listening to me doesn't care about that. It seems they're like, we don't care about the 10. It was the 10 simple steps to publishing an episode every day, and anyway, it was fun.
I mean, it's fun to we like bullet points.
Yeah, and it was fun to play with. I recorded another one. It was like the 6 steps to having a better relationship with your teens, tweens. So you can look forward to that.
That's good. I mean, I would listen to for, I have a good relationship with my kids, but it could always be better.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. I feel very blessed in that regard. We can save all that conversation for another episode. If people want to find you, they go to, where are they going to find your blog?
So people want to find me. My website is yourpermagrin.com. So it's YOUR Permagrin, PERMAGRIN.com. Just like it sounds.
Just like it sounds.
Self-explanatory. No need to tell you the story behind it. But my blog is actually on that website. My blog is called Sober in Santa Cruz. So that it kind of focuses around sobriety.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, love that. Well, very good. I am going to hit stop. Thank you for indulging me and the audience.
It's been really, really fun.
Yeah. And then we can chat after I hit stop. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay, cool.
Thank you for spending time with me today. As someone who is committed to growth and service to this world, I so appreciate your willingness to come with me, go within, and serve our world through change. If you found value in this podcast and you know someone who can use this message, share this episode with them. Share it so our mission can be achieved one episode at a time. And of course, subscribe so you can hear more. And lastly, for more resources on what has helped me on my journey and can help you on yours, go to belove.media/resources. That's BELOVE.media/resources. Thank you again for listening.